So we'll start off with our normal prayer for teacher-student. By now you all know it. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Punuktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our studies be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So as usual, I will stop my microphone so that you can formulate any question that you like. Already there is a question in formulation here, live. We're all live here, we're not dead yet. So I'll pause and wait for you to ask a question. So let me read your question out first. So it is, of course, necessary, regardless of spiritual life, just from a psychological point of view, to assess our status quo. Where are we? Where are we in life? In the face of various problems and so on. Very often life becomes an assessment and the necessity to acknowledge it and make adjustments, and we're all doing our best. So taking that for granted, when we then appraise ourselves and highlight maybe things that require improvement to others, and when we come across hostility as a reaction to that, then what do we do? Do we deal with it with loving compassion? Do we defend ourselves? Do we ignore it? Or do we defend ourselves vigorously? And maybe that's your question. I wonder if you could affirm whether that is your question or not.
Yes, Swamiji.
Okay, good. All right. So how should we react in short? I'm going to remind you then of some principles that I put under the heading of 4 R's. And this is familiar for most of you, but I'm going to remind you of what they are. One thing that we are sure about, but we don't really understand in practice, is that we are different from the mental field. What do we mean by the mental field? An area that we can observe. You know, for example, we can observe all our reactions, but probably by the time we really observe them, they've gone. And we're caught up in an autonomic reaction with no control over it, normally followed by regret, guilt, and what have you. But the fact is that we can review these things, and because we can review these things, we can take advantage, because what is the intrinsic tool by which we notice it is called attention. And attention has a two-way behavior, if you want to use this word. On the one side, we are aware of things outside, because the eyes see, the ears hear, the mouth tastes, and so on and so forth. And so naturally, our attention is geared toward that. If you have a small child, small baby even, that doesn't even talk, you click the fingers by the right ear, just as a test for the hearing, and the child will turn its head. The child will notice it. And so our biological makeup is one of survival, and we have the capacity to notice things which are potentially dangerous for us. And we therefore have the biological need to react. But man, of course, is rather different, because although man has a biological instrumentation of the physical body and a physical brain and a need and an urge to react, we also have an intellect that is able to weigh things up properly. And that intellect can be seen and can be observed. This attention can be moved outside or inside. And like a gear stick on a car, it can be moved in one direction or the other. But the mover has a free choice. Which direction will we do it? And we have to be extremely watchful. Kathopanishad tells us, like walking on the edge of a razor. We have to always be keen, alert, attentive. This is not a problem if we take life as a kind of sport or game, where we keep our attention constantly tuned, a well-tuned alertness. For example, if you play tennis, you stand on one side, your opponent on the other side. Immediately, you have no idea where your opponent is going to hit the ball. But one thing's for sure, your opponent will try to catch you. And so you have to try to anticipate just by looking at the opponent's body language. If you're really skilled in the art of combat, you may glare at your opponent and put the opponent off, and a good opponent will ignore it and spend all his energy and attention on a good service of the ball, which is designed to hit it exactly over the net toward you, and yet make it awkward for you to return, either by increasing the velocity of the strike or by calculating a spot where he or she thinks you may not be, and you have to run for it. So it's the same in life. We have to learn the skill of keeping alert and playfully anticipating what is going to happen, And we do this until we are so skilled we automatically know what is going to happen. There's an elderly, well, I don't know how elderly, I don't know, I'm probably, let's say 60s or 70s, a tennis player. He is skilled at making fun on the tennis court. And so he is so skilled, he's more skilled than any of the professional players, it seems, because he'll take any ball and instead of returning it in a conventional way, he'll put the tennis racket under his leg and return it in this way. He's having fun. You get some professional tennis players that are suffering from burnout. By the age of 30 or something, they had enough, they trained so hard. This man easily hits the ball and hits it in an entertaining way. And so, all right, I'm not sure what the nationality is of the man, but a European of some kind. So we have to remain alert because nature is playful and will throw many, many things at us. Take it as an opportunity to return the ball nicely. So we have 4 R's that I previously give. What is the first R? React. Initially, our reaction will be spontaneous. It'll come from a habit level. It'll come from a whole assembly, a whole library, if you will, a whole storage department where all your experiences, physical, emotional, psychological, intellectual, and all we have is our experience. And all anything has, and any being, no matter how crude or how sophisticated, all we have is our previous experience. And from previous experience, we notch it up as a learning thing. And then when we repeat it a couple of times, automatically we know what to do. That is why when a fly settles on your head, you feel it. Without even thinking, the hand goes and strikes. And normally, whatever it is, the insect is quicker than you. It has keener eyesight, keener reflexes. So there is a reflex action, a reaction. And the reaction need not come to fruition. So some examples are there, and Swami Vivekananda himself gives an example. Somebody steals a watch. You may have noticed I'm fond of watches. So I have a watch here on my hand, on my arm, and habitually I use it. It is my talisman. Talisman means it is my amulet that reminds me that Mother Kali is here. That is, I come as time, says Krishna. So that's fine. It reminds me of the Lord flowing unit by unit as time, giving me opportunities, first of all, to see what reaction is there. Secondly, to see when the reaction has come and gone, as it will, to assess what happened. We can put that as a second R. First R, react. Second R, review. What happened? Somebody stole my watch. Okay. First reaction, anger. The anger may not necessarily be one unit. It could be followed by an internal script. My grandfather gave me this watch. It's so precious. How dare that? What impertinent, and so on and so forth. But you have to count how many of these negatives are there, and they are negative. Because every criticism carries its weight throughout the entire corpus of the universe. Your own corpus, the body, the mind. And so psychologists are wrong when they say, oh, if you suffer from anger, please go out in the garden, dig a big hole, and swear and throw your toys out of the cot, express your anger, get it out of the way. At least you're not harming anybody. Well, you are. You are harming yourself. You are entrenching an anger habit in you. And you may not be spreading it to others, but indirectly you are, if you hold the idea that there's only one existence. Your mind is not your own. And if you understand all the principles of the Vedanta philosophy correctly, you'll see there's only one mind. That is a cosmic mind. Only one broadcasting station. Our local version of it is like a receiver, like a small local radio set. And the broadcast and the reception are identical. And because they're identical, maybe we make a mistake and say, my mind. It's not yours at all. It's just a local receiver. Some kind of aerial internal area is there. A transistor is there in the form of a mental process. An interpretive faculty is there. But the original broadcast, that is there. It's a whole one broadcast. We tune into it. And our reaction, of course, is local. How we react, that's individual. We can choose how to react. Now, in the example of the watch being stolen, supposing I review this, then maybe I could think, where does this anger come from? Well, when I was 5 years of age, somebody stole my most favorite toy. I stamped, I shouted, I cried, I got frustrated. I felt a sense of ownership and indignation, and it's unfair. I tried to snatch the toy back, but the child kicked me and bit me on the arm, and I cried to my mother, and my mother said, never mind, let him have it, I'll buy you another one, something like that. Some kind of pacifying thing was there, but it left its mark because every thought, every movement, not just from childhood, but in our system, also from previous lives, carry forward, and these impressions we call samskaras, unconscious impressions. It's a mixture of good and bad experiences. Whatever it is there. We can't avoid it. So our whole personality is based on our previous experience. Where we are now is what we have been and done in the past. We can't get away from it. Nor can we find it easily an easy way of, when a wave of anger comes up or any other negative wave comes up, we cannot stop it because suppressing it is also negative. Suppressing it is saying that let me exert my control over this and push it down. But physics tells us that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It'll just be, all we're doing is, there's an expression, kicking the can down the road. We're not dealing with the issue. We're actually making it stronger. Let it come, let it go. It's come anyway. It's a visitor. Deal with it, revalue it, understand why it would be there. And ultimately in your reviewing, you may come to this one conclusion. And this conclusion comes from the study of the Vedanta philosophy that says that there is only oneness. There's oneness of mind, there's oneness in the physical world, only one matter, only one energy. That's all on the physical world, the world of change, the world of waves. And there are subtle varieties of it that we call tanmatras. Subtle forces lie beneath the expressed waves manifest as a physical world, the world of our experience. And this combination of waves makes the world, and we're unable to notice them or see them unless we are a yogi. What does that mean? It means that in the depths of meditation, when we explore what things are, we see them as waves. The Vakra Gita tells us, if we understand these 5 elemental waves, we have immediately found our freedom. We will immediately be free. What an astonishing statement. Because when we see the ephemeral nature of waves and their combination, we come to a conclusion, it's a play of waves. And that immediately infers to us, first of all, the capacity to observe it, indicating our own free nature. And the fact is, I'm not that. If I was that, I wouldn't be able to observe these waves. So what is our ignorance? Our ignorance is we got tied up in it. We identified with the waves and their manifested variety as I, physical body, body-mind complex, along with the faculties of prophet-actor complex. Prophet-actor complex, everything I do, I own. No, that's a wrong evaluation. So the whole of our spiritual life is really to revalue things, stand in a different position. That brings us to the third R. First R, react. Second, review. Third, revalue. Why don't we revalue something? Why don't we come to a conclusion? I don't have any ownership. I thought this was my watch. It's not my watch. There's a great example of that. I think it was Pabhari Baba, the great mystic. And I think the story goes, I may have it slightly wrong, there was a robber who stole his pot. And he ran after him. And the robber naturally ran faster. Eventually he caught him up. Hey. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this. No, that's not the question. You forgot the lid, here. It doesn't belong to me. Everything can be re-registered to the divine. Who said it was mine? That's the mistake, my mistake. Can the mistake be corrected? Yes, of course, practice. Revaluing things. I don't own anything. I cannot profit by anything. I'm staying in the game just for the joy of playing. I'll return any ball that the divine throws at me across the tennis net and learn the skill of returning it nicely. But beware, on the other side, oh Lord, you are giving me this awkward ball. That's okay. I'll return it as best I can and repeat the process until I learn how to do it from this corner. Then please throw it in the other corner and I'll return it. A game of loving sportsmanship, a loving game of tennis with my beloved on the other side, with a challenging attitude, with a sporting attitude, an attitude of adventure and thrill. Come on, do it. Somebody who has that shift in philosophy will have no fear of anything, because they will understand, firstly, the unity of existence everywhere, secondly, the ephemeral nature of the waves themselves, and thirdly, the joy of engaging in these waves with a sporting attitude. Using another analogy, learn to surf the waves in a joyful way. So once I've revalued everything, I have now a new formula. I have a new reaction that I can use. And by rehearsing this reaction, ultimately it becomes entrenched at the habit level and becomes the first reaction, replaces the first inherent subconscious reaction. And when I do this, then I'm somebody of great, perfect skill, somebody of steady wisdom, somebody who has transcended the three gunas. Bhagavad Gita puts it as Sthita Prajna, somebody of steady wisdom, and somebody who has transcended the three evolutionary forces of nature. Triguna Titananda is one who has the bliss of the three, of transcending the three gunas. So, Triguna Tita, this is one of the descriptions. Sthita Prajna is one of these descriptions. But also you can see how somebody who has this sporting attitude, if you feel that, you can adopt a sporting attitude toward it. Revalue everything. Now, when we start loving ourselves and speaking up, what do you mean by loving yourself? Again, there's a mismatch really with the Vedantic ideal, because Vedanta tries to tell you more and more and more through logic and through experience. You are not the body, you're not the mind, no more than you are the car that you drive or the engine that drives it. You're simply the gear shifter. You're simply the director. That's all. Having that freedom, you can determine how you want to react. And so, should we assess, and we have to change the language, the mental fields, virtues and vices? Yes, that's a good thing. But I've distanced myself from identifying it with me. So when we start loving ourselves, in this context, it doesn't make any sense. I am love. How can I love myself? You see? We've mixed up a subject and object. If by myself I mean the body or the personality or the whole series of characteristics that we find, for example, in personality development courses such as the Enneagram. The whole purpose of the Enneagram is to be devoid of any compulsive personality. So what is a free person? And for those who don't know, the Enneagram, a system of personality development that says there are 9 key personality traits, and we are identified with one of them. We're identified with one of them. We can't just leave it there and say, oh, that's fate. We have to pursue every single characteristic, positive characteristic that we can find to be a fuller, more fulfilled person, an all-round person. Somebody who is skilled at what we might call work-life balance, work-life spirit balance, we can put it more in that way. A well-balanced person. You can't identify what is your number. All the characteristics taken on, all the personality. In other words, exploiting the full potential that is inherent in every single cell of the body, contained in the inner cell, the nucleus of a cell, deoxyribonucleic acid, where over 100,000 coded messages are presented, and it can fill libraries equivalent to the Encyclopedia Britannica duplicated many times. So we are using only a fraction of our infinite possibilities. And why don't we then develop? Why don't we open up our infinite possibilities? But you see, if we choose a negative reaction, this is a close down. This is closing the exit gates. This is a shrinkage. It's not an expansion. What we want is freedom, and freedom is an expansion. So, yes, we can highlight where is the mental field. See the language. I'm not identifying with it. What condition is the personality in? That's the one thing. What corrective measures can we do? In other words, how can we educate the mind in a different way? And take those measures. And then, when somebody opposes us, why don't we see the same inner perfection in them? And why don't we then judge what is the right course from an impersonal point of view? Impersonal means that having assessed it rightly, let's take an example from parenthood. A child, not knowing any better, wants to run into the traffic. A good parent will chase after it and bring the child back. The child will not understand what went on, won't be mature enough to understand cars are dangerous. This is part of the life experience. They have to learn this. Still, it's a humiliating experience for the child. But the child has to learn the logic of it, the harm, the difficulty about it. So in this same way, we take the mind and lead it to a better place. We allow it, so all our discipline basically is an inner conversation with the mind. Taking the attention, saying, my dear fellow, please, why don't you alight on this or alight on that? Like a bee, you see, a bee chooses to alight on a flower, but a fly, on the other hand, will alight, it doesn't care. It can alight on a compost heap, a flower, anything. So we have to be selective. This quality is the first real cultivated step in spiritual life, and it is called discernment or viveka, discrimination. I prefer the English term discernment. We have to be discerning in our outlook and in our behavior. And that process of discernment is in these 4 hours. React, review, revalue, and then replace our original reaction. That process we have to learn to do. We have to learn to repeat it. It requires stepping back, dissociating ourselves from the wave that came and went, and then systematically putting some higher value in by repeating constantly all the glories that we can catch in language. We do it in language because every word has a corresponding concept to it. So if you think, weak, 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 you'll be weak. If you think I'm a sinner, you'll be a sinner. This is Vivekananda's language. Whatever you say materializes, firstly, in your physical condition, and then your environment, and then circumstances and people and places and events that come into your environment. And this is something you have to deal with. On top of that, nature will provide its own mix of interesting things, of curveballs. Somebody who has an adventurous attitude will have this prayer, Lord, today, please give me an interesting curveball. Majority of people don't say it like that. Please save me, please save me. So this is a shift in thinking. If you want to try it out, that would be a wonderful thing. If you think that you can do it, then take up this adventurous aspect of life and go with it. Now, how to choose then the reaction that you want? So there is a story by Sri Ramakrishna, and you're all familiar with it. Never mind, it's worth repeating. And I'm going to vary the story because that's what makes it interesting. And I suppose because it's a story, I have to say once upon a time. Anyway, in a small village, a holy man passed, and he was about to go on his way. And as he was about to go on his way, the villagers stopped him and said, please don't go along this path. There's a dangerous cobra. It's been intimidating the whole village for many years. And for sure, it has a mean temperament. It'll raise its hood. It won't just threaten you. It'll strike you. You'll be mortally wounded. We respect you, so please don't do this. Anyway, the holy man, seeing the opportunity and having no fear, assured the villagers, don't worry. I have a number of mantras. I have a way of teaching, and I'm sure I can tame this dangerous snake. Sure enough, as he goes along, this dangerous snake comes up, and before he strikes, the holy man repeats some mantras, obviously sees the divine within, and the snake becomes immediately pacified and starts being listening. Oh, snake, how can you terrorize people like this? Isn't this bad behavior? gives him a lecture, gives him a mantra, gives him spiritual instruction, and tells him, please do not bite anybody from here on, and goes on his way. Like a good teacher, sometime later he comes back, how's my disciple doing? And he goes and looks where the snake used to be, can't find the snake anywhere, goes back to the village. Have you seen the snake? Have you seen the snake? Oh, yes, we remember a long time back. Yes, we saw a thin piece of something like barbed wire somewhere, emaciated kind of snake. What happened to it? Oh, it became so tame. It became so compassionate, so docile, that the village people played with it. The young boys took it by the tail, dashed against the rocks. So we don't know what happened. Maybe it's dead. So he goes along, calls his disciple, and the snake, half conscious, comes out from a stone. Oh, Master, you're there. What happened to you? Then he relays exactly what the village people have said. See, I followed your instructions. I didn't bite anybody. But you're very thin. Yes, instead of eating frogs, I became a vegetarian. I'm now a pacifist. And I repeated your mantra and so on and so forth. And the boys, you can't blame anybody, Foolish snake, says his guru. Foolish, foolish snake. I told you not to bite. I didn't say anything about hissing. So we can hiss in a measured way, but hissing means we do it, there's no malice in it whatsoever. So it's the internal intention. We have this story, famous story from Jesus, who goes into the temple, and we're told drives out the money changers with a whip, turns their tables over. And many people opposed to Jesus and Christianity mark this change in behavior. Here's a person who says, turn the other cheek. And yet he goes and behaves in this way, shouting, turning the tables over. And we don't really understand the true historical context of this, because this is the outer courtyard of the major temple in Jerusalem. And this story really it's immediately before the Passover, and people from everywhere are purchasing, in the courtyard, are purchasing animals, because these animals, sheep, are being taken to the inner courtyard of the temple for sacrifice. Now, somebody reading that or knowing that may say, oh, maybe Jesus, like Buddha, was against animal sacrifice or something. No, he was against the commercial exploitation of people. And so he decided to exercise his authority. We see the same thing when we studied the Ramayana there, and series 4 or 5, and we were talking about the remarkable story of Vishwamitra, how he was originally a Kshatriya king, and how out of jealousy, pride, anger, all the combination of all these things, and a desire to possess the great cow that Vashishta had, that provided everything for the ashram, Suvarla. And so he then goes off, and after so many years, so great a length of time, the story says hundreds of years, of course, but we can take that as we take it. But the long and the short is, it took a long struggle for him to control his anger, his lust and his anger and his greed. So his anger was a big thing. He got angry very easily. That seemed to be his natural temperament. Now that he became a Brahma Rishi, he became the highest Rishi ever, still he could feign the anger. He could pose in angry terms. And that's a mark of a good teacher, by the way, that where a teacher can pose anger for the good of the student and make the correction. The teacher's not really angry. The teacher poses it. If I really want to correct somebody in a desperate way, then it's my habit. I'm giving a secret away here a little bit. I'll use the D word. You may wonder, what is the D word? disappointed. I'm disappointed in you. That is like a thunderbolt through the heart of the devotee. So I don't mean it in a malicious way. No more than a parent will draw back a child's hand from the fire in a harmful, mean way, or rescue the child from the traffic, or give the child some guidelines, some rewards and punishment that gives a child boundaries and security. Judgment has to be used in all of these things. And don't use your first impulse. Your first impulse will be this reaction. And the reaction inevitably will come from the negative deposit, the storehouse that stores all your inherent instinctive reactions, as we call them. In other words, all this self-preservation instinct that comes into the sophisticated psyche of a human being, all based essentially on survival. So Darwin's evolution was absolutely correct in this way, that it is to do with survival. These are the base instincts. But the human has the capacity to transform discord into harmony, to use the judgment to create laws, to create values, to create social structures for the benefit of everybody. So there is something within man that can appreciate the aesthetics of something, the beauty of something, that has a curiosity to investigate how do things work. All of these things are there within man. And you can go further, and quite confidently we can say, there are infinite possibilities in you that have to be explored, exploited, manifest, and all of them will be for the good of society, for the good of the overall, all beings. This is the characteristic that we find in the Bhagavad Gita. Somebody of steady wisdom will work for the benefit, for the welfare of all beings. Very often, spiritual life in India was characterized as an individual selfish pursuit that had nothing to do with social benefit, had nothing to do with the welfare of all beings. And yet 5,000 years ago, there it is in the Bhagavad Gita, working for the welfare, spontaneously, working for the welfare of all beings. How did this degenerate? And Swami Vivekananda brings it back. He says, come on, work for the welfare of all beings. Where does he get it from? He gets it from his master, Krishna. I'm disappointed. You wanted this Nirvikalpa Samadhi to drift off, to evaporate into the bliss of nirvana. Oh, I'm disappointed in you. I thought you'd be like a big banyan tree, giving shade and shelter to thousands and thousands of people. That kind of thing. That is the highest thing. The highest thing is working for the welfare of all beings. Having attained your freedom, please, won't you share it with others? And actually, spontaneously, you'll do it. That is why Jesus says you cannot hide your light under a bushel or a bed. It will shine for everybody to see. You'll be something like a beaming lantern for everybody. So we have to judge on a case-by-case basis how we will react, and make sure that your judgment has gone through this process, the process of reviewing and revaluing and formulating a measured reaction, bearing in mind that all speech really should be kind and beneficial to the other person, even though it may ultimately be of the teacher kind, which is harsh, but you have to tread very carefully with that. Turn the other cheek. This is the pacifist point of view. This is the point of view of the sage that is the non-violent sage. Yes, the sage that meditates in the forest. Wonderful. The hermit that lives either in a cave or the monastic life, silent life within the depths of a Trappist monastery or Cistercian monastery or any of these silent orders, that's fine. Dedicating your life to meditation. But most of us will be following the model of the administrative stage, such as Janaka, who is constantly busy, not passive. And then the judgment will have to be there. How will I use my power? And it would always have to be for the good of everyone. Everyone includes yourself. So this would be my answer to your question. I hope that satisfies your question.
Thank you, Swamiji. I placed on the chat the clarification of what I meant about loving ourselves because it was not clear. And also like a little compliment to the question. But yes, thank you so much for the answer.
It's the sun, okay. When will you beam on yourself? It's not an appropriate question. The sun's job is to beam outward. It doesn't beam on itself. If your nature is love, you don't expect to love yourself. It's out of context. Your job is to love. And so, see, loving yourself doesn't make any sense because immediately you're interpreting the self as a psychophysical entity, separate and different from others, that requires love and to be loved. And there is that human aspect to it, absolutely. And it's a beautiful and sweet thing, no doubt. There's a human emotional need for it. But behind that is the eternal self. Behind that is your divine nature, which is always full and free, and which is love itself. You cannot say God is love, and my internal self, the kingdom of heaven within where the king resides, is not love. It is pure love. If the cosmic variety is love, the individual variety, as it were, is also love. So you had a question also?
When I arrived, I was reeling emotionally. And the experience, which had been, 5 people together. And there was a moment that I experienced as colossal hurt. I said, ouch, the same as if my body was pinched. And then I returned to stillness. Somebody asked me to continue talking or brought back the conversation. And I just said, look, I'll come to stillness and quiet. And made my way to the restroom, and the other woman who'd witnessed it came, and she offered a lot of tenderness. I arrived home and I was reeling. And this person again phoned, how are you? So when I arrived here, I was reeling and witnessing. So
here means here.
Here.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, at 7 or before 7.
Mm.
So now that I've heard the beauty of your guiding, the reaction in the past could have been a reaction. I said ouch, and I came into quiet stillness. The second is, okay, one is reaction. The second is to review. Yeah. Mm. So I began that process of what has happened, what's happening, and watching it, observing, aware of this, as if I got one of those punches that comes out of nowhere. Mm. Yeah. And it's like, I thought we were all walking joyfully together. So I did go into that aspect of what has just happened, but the enormity when I arrived here, because it was to do with my baby, I call her my baby sister, with a very bad cancer prognosis. And that had been part of the conversation. So revalue.
Revalue, yes.
While everything in me was reeling, like I'd been punched, at some point I came to the word innocence. And I wasn't strong enough, but it came in, Okay, so maybe the piece I need help with here, because I was saying if I sit long enough here, the reeling will quieten. The seeing will be more powerful. So it's as if I need you to help me with the fourth.
Okay.
Or, please.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Fourth R, that is to revise your reaction, will be based on the revaluation. So let us give you that example. And I'll give the example coming back to the watch being stolen, which is not as dramatic as your scenario, but it could be. It depends on me.
Yes, because I might say my well-being.
Yes.
But then I got my well-being.
Yeah.
My peace.
Yes. You see, there's a very simple formula, and it's so simple that it's very difficult for people to adopt in some ways. Very often people want something more complex. But it is to see the divine, or what religion calls God, or what philosophy calls the divine self, in all people, places, and events. Now, in a situation where the people side of it is so close to us that it becomes a little difficult, then inevitably you have to move away from the situation a little bit and get somebody to help you with it a little bit. And so if there's a particular difficulty with a person, and we have to meditate every day anyway, why don't we revalue the nature of this person, just as we've had to revalue the nature of ourselves? So in the question, the original question, loving ourselves in a revalued context doesn't make any sense. It's a bit like, because what we call a body and mind, these are instruments. Just as a car with an engine. So you can say, I love my car, and we love it so that we actually give it a gender. We for some reason or other, cars are feminine. And some people give it a name, my car this, my car that. And then I took her to the garage to be fixed and so on. See? So like that. We have to understand that the inner divine spirit has no gender whatsoever, but it expresses itself in differentiation, gender, and all the rest of it, behavioral characteristics and so on. And we all have them, and we all have pluses and minuses in them. And so the first thing is that when somebody opposes us or somebody makes things difficult for us, the first thing we have to understand is they are suffering. I am suffering also because I've taken it in this way, but they're also suffering. Suffering is the psychological level, in this case also on the physical level. So the physical level is there, we have to be compassionate. The physical level will change somebody's behavior also. And we don't really understand until we ourselves are put in that exact position, so we take it for granted that behavior will change and we make allowances. And then on the psychological level, we're all suffering. We're all in the same boat. But we shouldn't end it there. When we revalue the whole thing, we'll see the physical level, psychological level, these are all instrumental levels, but deep beneath it, and the reason why somebody even talks or thinks or looks is because of this kingdom of heaven within. This divine thing which is full and free and perfect. And we have to use the capacity of our imagination to reach it. So we can say, all right, I've gone through the first layer, it's physical. I've gone through the second layer, it's psychological, emotional, etc. And suffering is on both of these levels. But going deeper, I find it's full and free. Is there some imagination I can use for this? Yes. I can maybe sit in meditation, take that person in our visualization process, sit them on a golden throne, and with the utmost uninhibited love, place a garland of flowers around their neck, because the thing that we have theologically identified as God, the God we made in our own image and likeness, that really is everywhere. The process of spirituality is, step one, see that divinity in everything. Next, see that divinity flowing through everything. Next, as everything. Next, beyond everything. And so we can construct in our imagination the divinity of that person. Lord, you are come as this form, Queen of the universe. Sit on this golden throne. Please accept my worship. Let me scatter flowers before your feet. Let me offer you water. Let me see your beaming face. Let me see how your divine shines like the sun everywhere. Make a meditation like that. Don't do it with anything else in mind except endorsing the reality which is there, whatever that person is, be it sister, brother, colleague, person with good behavior, person with bad behavior. There are no bad people, only bad behaviors. Like this, it's all a layered construction of waves. And these are all not just insentient waves, these are full of divine sentiency. These are the very glories of God. Seeing that clearly, we are accessing the truth. We're doing it through our imagination. Why should we use our imagination? Because our hurting is from the base of imagination. What Patanjali calls verbal delusion. I often wondered, what does he mean by a wave? 5 waves are there. Verbal delusion, what does this expression mean? And then it struck me, it means I'm imagining something which isn't really there. I've got the wrong end of the stick because I've superimposed an imaginary thing on something which is not really there. But what is the corrective attitude? Corrective attitude is to put in all the subtle qualities, all the pure qualities, not to get rid of it, but to replace it with something better. And we do this through words: strong, true, wise, full, free, truth, beauty, goodness, love, harmony. And those words have corresponding concepts, and the concepts require imagination. And imagination requires also an emotional feeling that goes with it. So as one suggestion, mentally think that this is sitting in front of you on a golden throne. It is the divine, like the sun being transformed, pure consciousness being transformed into your sister or somebody else, whoever it is. And then doing a ritualistic worship mentally and evoking a feeling of love and gratitude and thankfulness and seeing that there. And what will happen? There's a transformation in you, but there's a transformation everywhere. The transformation in that person, you can't avoid it. This is what's called spiritual healing. How did Jesus view the leper? Or how did Jesus view the blind person, or the deaf person, or the lame person, the dead person, and so on? How did he make a transformation there? He must have shifted his attitude with a variation in his wiring, and saw the perfection, the Father in heaven in his language, sitting there within, seeing that oneness, feeling that oneness, not just seeing it, but feeling it. In that way, our evaluation automatically gives us a new way of behaving. It automatically supplies us with the 4th R of how we react. It's not a construct, it's a spontaneous reaction to our evaluation. I hope that makes sense.
Swamiji, that actually reminded me to Sri Ramakrishna when he had some devotees and they wanted to go into samadhi. And then he used to ask them to look at him while he was sitting and see this deity that they like to worship. And then suddenly they would really start seeing that they see in him, and some of them would just go into absolute ecstasy, because it would actually happen. So it just reminded me to that moment. I think it's incredible.
How we relate to the truth yields the truth from within. If we think that the world is physical truth only and no more than that, then that's the truth of that is all that there is for us. If we revalue the world and we see that the truth is something like that of the philosophical idealists, that it is all idealism and idealistic forms, the kind of Plato's view of the world, then that's what it'll be for us. If we think that this whole world is spirit, then that truth will be for us. That is how we will see everything. And in seeing that, there's no further truth to go. That is the ultimate truth. No harm in doing that in those progressive stages. We don't have to go straight there. As time goes on, habitually we'll go straight there and see spirit, pure spirit. In the meantime, we'll do it progressively.
Is it okay to speak?
Yes.
The last time I saw you, I talked about I was going to climb a mountain.
Oh, yes.
So I'm laughing because of all the preparation in advance, and this was to be achieved. And there was something, if I had a learning, it was a bit like anything on the external plane will always end up being a coming and a going.
Yes.
And the highest mountain is the one you've just referred to.
Yeah, exactly. Good. All right, good. So thank you. We leave it there. Thank you for your questions. So Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Good.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Merci beaucoup, Swami.
Merci beaucoup. Bonne soirée.
Merci.
Bye.